Welcome to the Global Peace Film Festival Lives Online Conversation 2021 Festival Edition. Please join me, Kelly Devine, the Artistic Director, and Nina Strike, the Executive Director, as we welcome the filmmaker and the people that you'll meet in the film, Kid Candidate. The director is Jasmine Stodel, and we'll meet Hayden Pedigo and Jeff Blackburn from the film. Please remember to check out peacefilmfest.org for all updates concerning the film festival and our year-round programming. The festival this year, our in-person screenings begin September 20th and run through the 26th, and our online streaming festival begins September 27th and runs through October 3rd. Again, please join me in welcoming all of the people behind Kid Candidate. Thank you guys for being with us.
Welcome, all of you. And I'm going to start by asking you to tell us about the film and also about your roles in the film. I'll start with Jasmine to give an overview of the film and then go to Hayden and Jeff.
Hi, thank you so much, Nina and Kelly. We're thrilled to be part of your film festival and I'm very excited to talk to you. I am the director and producer of the movie. And the film is about a young man, Hayden Pedigo, who's here right now, and his adventure in running for office. But I'll have him talk about it because he actually went through the whole thing.
Hi, my name is Hayden Pedigo. Kid Candidate is a documentary directed by Jasmine Stodel about my run for Amarillo City Council in 2019 when I was 24 and 25 years old. It was started off by a satirical campaign video I made that I put up on Facebook that gained a lot of traction, was on the news, and in the midst of all of that somewhat viral chaos, I decided, what if I actually did run for city council in Amarillo and address problems I saw in my hometown? So the film is profiling a young person trying to get into politics by accident and the roadblocks they go through to even participate in the process and the stumbling that happens when a young person goes into something they've never tried, especially up against people that don't want them there. So I kind of say that's kind of the gist of the movie.
And Jeff?
Yeah, and I want to tell you, my name's Jeff Blackburn, and I'm in the movie playing not any character at all except myself, and that apparent self is to be sort of a I think I was one of those obstacles for Hayden, but not like an establishment obstacle. I'm a civil rights lawyer. I'm from Amarillo, and still care about what happens to folks there, even though I practice law all over the Southwest and the state and all that, and have a kind of very deliberate view of what Amarillo is all about and what it needs. And I guess, Hayden, I think it's fair to say I became your sort of a counterpoint and a hard-bitten foil to your enthusiasm sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff is definitely the much needed counterpoint in the film, but it's a positive. Jeff's a positive counterpoint in the film because I would say watching the movie, you would think it's going to turn out one way with me and Jeff. You would think that maybe we're going to be enemies at the starting of the film, but you get to see some developments in there.
Yeah, and listen, I got to tell you, in that context, I want to say something that Hayden himself touched on. This is a snapshot in time of Hayden then. And I have to tell you that despite our political differences, which are very apparent in the film, mostly because I have politics and he didn't really, no offense, Hayden, but I have watched him develop and evolve. And, you know, I started out liking Hayden and I still like Hayden. And I think he's a really great guy. And that doesn't have anything to do with his youth or whether he's fresh-faced and wanted to get involved. I think he's a real three-dimensional person. And I came to appreciate that a lot more too. So there's also sort of I think a subtext in the movie about just human relationships and how politics can maybe sometimes bridge that gap and get people together who normally wouldn't otherwise be friends, you know?
Yep. I couldn't have said it better myself.
So Jasmine, Hayden mentioned that his campaign started from his satirical film that he made. So you weren't there from the very beginning. How did you find out about this, and what attracted you to this particular story?
I mean, Hayden is just a very dynamic, interesting person who has a lot of layers. I wasn't there from the beginning. I was actually brought on to kind of figure out if there was a story there or not by the production company, Gunpowder and Sky. And once I met Hayden, I mean, I could just tell from the video and his music and kind of, you know, he's a very intelligent person, that there was more there. And but what also attracted me to the story was, you know, here's a young person who really wasn't political, but cared about where they were from, cared about, you know, what was happening in their town, and actually did something, you know, took a chance and put themselves out there, which for me has always been, you know, I have an accent. As a foreigner, as a person who I grew up in South Africa, in a country where a lot of people didn't even get to vote for, you know, generations. And here in America, I just find it very interesting that a lot of people don't end up voting. So to see someone go out and do something was really inspiring to me, and kind of made me feel like I had an opportunity to possibly, you know, inspire other people, have Hayden inspire other people to get involved.
And Hayden, since you're a creative person yourself, what was it like for another director to come in and start following your life?
Oh, it was terrible. No, it was tough.
They were terrible moments.
Well, it was tough. I mean, basically because you're already running for public office for the first time with no experience is already stressful enough, but then have someone following you and filming you and miking you up and doing all that the entire time kind of doubled the stress. I mean, it was comforting in some ways because it was nice to always have that presence of people that supported me, even if they weren't saying anything, we're just holding cameras and boom mics. I still knew that, hey, there's these supportive people here. But I jokingly said it was terrible. It wasn't terrible. I would, in seriousness, say it was hard. It was difficult to do. But in hindsight, I'm glad it was done just for the finished film. I think I wanted people to see what happened, but it definitely wasn't fun doing it.
And also, you don't see it, but most of the people that worked on the film were actually Hayden's friends, who were on the crew. His friend Alex, his friend Scott, his friend Malcolm, who all appear in the movie. Even Jonathan comes in a little bit. But, you know, I think that it was difficult and kind of isolating for him to have, you know, his own people around him, but not around him, you know. But I also think we were a little bit of a support for him. And I think it's always, I mean, I've been interviewed a few times and it's nerve-wracking for me. I can't even imagine having a crew follow you around all the time, you know, and wondering what you're doing and how you're doing things and trying to be natural and all of that. So Hayden was, I mean, really amazing and such a great sport, and was very, very open throughout the process.
Oh, and for anyone and everyone who sees this film, that openness really is genuine and will come through. And Jeff, you also play an immense role, even though, yes, it's a documentary, but in that figurative sense of you were also very open and very candid. And can you tell us a little bit about, you know, what it was like to be documented while you were in this relationship, this burgeoning relationship with Hayden in his new civic endeavor?
Sure. You know, I have to tell you, I had done I was the centerpiece of a documentary years ago that was on Independent Lens that PBS aired. And those were very serious film. I've been in a lot of other ones, but this was one where basically they lived with me, like literally in my house for, I don't know, 3 months. in a big case, a big campaign that was finally coming to a conclusion at the time. So that part I was kind of used to. On the other hand, I was also used to not being constrained or being scripted in any way, shape, or form, or doing anything that I thought would look better on camera. I can tell you, I'm like that all the time. So I mean, what viewers that watch this movie are getting is me, strictly unvarnished, and they might conclude from time to time that I'm kind of a jerk, which I think I am or can be. I mean, other people would call that blunt, but which I am. So, I mean, but that's just me. And I guess I didn't really feel alarmed at having people around filming that. But at the same time, I knew in my mind, it was really important to just absolutely be totally me, and not, say stuff in a way that I thought maybe an audience would like or like better or something like that.
And I'd like to add to that is like the reason Jeff is such a great character in the film is because it was so difficult to get people, especially when you go to a small town and you have an accent or you look like me or you're just a little different, to be trusted. And so it was difficult for me to get people to actually, say exactly what they thought. And I think in Amarillo and in a lot of small towns and maybe in big cities too, you don't air your dirty laundry. But Jeff honestly didn't really care about that. He just cared about saying whatever he had to say. And that was so refreshing for me. And Hayden and him actually remind me of each other. It's kind of a weird thing. They're like kind of the same in a way. They're very passionate about, what they care about. They're both very intelligent people, and they're both not afraid to say what they think.
Well, that definitely comes through, and I can see what you're saying, and what people will find when they watch the film is that these are not arguments for the sake of arguments. These are arguments about very deeply held positions of integrity for both of these people.
Exactly.
And it really comes through. And Jasmine, so you came into this process as a filmmaker, as a human being. Whenever we come into a situation, as you said, you're an outsider. Did you have any preconceptions that that ended up being challenged? What did you learn from in your own life from this process?
Well, you always come in with your own judgments and your own ideas of what a place is going to be like and what people are going to be like. And you're always surprised because, these are your stories and your assumptions that you're telling yourself. I've learned kind of to try and curb that because, as a filmmaker, as a documentary person, you're always like, you have no idea what you're going to uncover until you uncover it. So, Amarillo is everything I thought it would be and nothing I would thought it would be. It has like such a interesting, group of people living there that you would never ever think. Spoiler alert, but like there's a huge refugee community in Amarillo, and we highlight that. And I didn't know that they would be there, and that they would become such an important part of our story. So there's a huge Hayden's friends, and there's like a huge, not huge, but like a big community of artists, in that area. Even the mayor is an artist herself. She paints. So there were all these amazing, surprising things. All the, spoiler too, the music in the film, a lot of it is Hayden's, but like also artists out of Amarillo, which was so exciting for me to have that in our soundtrack, So I feel like if you look for it, you'll find it. But if you really look, you'll find way more interesting things.
And Hayden, what was the process for you? Like, did you see Amarillo through a different lens through this process? Did anything about it surprise you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I saw Amarillo in a lot of different ways I wasn't aware of before running and before the film. I think I saw a lot of positives and a lot of negatives. I think on the positive side of things, I saw a lot deeper into the communities that are being negatively affected by Amarillo's form of governing that they've been using for years. So I think that was kind of the most sobering thing, is when you actually see the actual fallout that occurs when these forms of government are in place to ensure those types of things happen. And you start to realize that there's no accidents in this, that there's going to be victims of these decisions, and there's going to be winners and there's going to be losers. And the winners are the people that are making sure that their policy and how they work within Amarillo benefits them and their group of people. And that's all that matters. That's the sole focus. So I think that was something that growing up in Amarillo, I was aware of, but I didn't know to the extent of it. So I think that was the more grim, sobering side of it. On the more positive side is, I think in this film, you'll see that Amarillo is really a nuanced type thing, where I think a lot of other documentaries would have just looked at it and gone like, Amarillo is like a conservative, backwoods, dumbass town full of morons. When the movie actually does the exact opposite of going, there's might be a lot of backwards ideals in some of the government, but you can actually see that Amarillo is a pretty nuanced place with a lot of different beliefs and people and ideologies. And it's not as one dimensional on any side as you would think. It's not really trying to push any type of narrative. And I think it shows the natural truth of Amarillo, better or worse.
And Jeff, you're a longtime resident of Amarillo. You're a critic, but you also must love it on some level. Can you talk about your relationship with Amarillo?
Yeah, it's a long relationship. So I came back, I grew up there. I became a political activist. I mean, like at age 13, back during the anti-war movement in Amarillo. Incidentally, about some of the same people that you find now that were activists then are still around, you know. I mean, there's a certain draw to the place. But I have to tell you, I do not have a romantic picture of Amarillo. I don't think it's a good place. I think it is and my family has been there for many, I mean, since like the turn of the last century. They were a so-called pioneer family, and, you know, they've been there for a long time. So my view of Amarillo is not as cartoonish as probably the kind of people that Hayden alluded to would have it, you know, that it's some incredibly bad cesspool of stupidity. But unfortunately, it's an incredibly bad cesspool of stupidity. And it really is. And the only good thing about an Amarillo, this is the only way that I was able to keep going for many, many decades, was that there were a small number of people, artists and musicians and people that I think Hayden is kind of connected with. There were always there and could lend some degree of support to each other. And I mean, you know, I came back very deliberately because, hey, it's where the work is for me. I mean, I came back to Amarillo because there wasn't a single lawyer doing anything like suing cops or representing women and minorities in civil rights cases or fair employment cases. And there still really aren't. It's just that kind of place. So it was good for me. And I see Hayden and this kind of little group and sort of milieu that he was part of as being part of a long chain of a tiny group of sort of bohemian, not really, you know, kind of marginalized people. Now, on the other hand, I do want to mention this. Amarillo has changed substantially because in this respect, it's now in the grip of an exceptionally corrupt, awful group of people who have turned it into a personal piggy bank to make a lot of money off of soaking taxpayers. And it's going to end very badly. In the meantime, like a lot of other like many other places in the desert Southwest, it is facing a very acute environmental crisis because they've drained all the water out, and then they've lied to everybody about whether they've drained all the water. And I doubt that it has more than 10 years left as a viable city, which is to say, I mean, if there's no water, there's no town. And so I see the problems there as being especially acute right now. And I think in the movie, we talk a lot about that. And one of my sources of frustration with Hayden was an inability for him to kind of get his head around how important politics really becomes when you're dealing with a city that is at a particular kind of crossroads. And that community is at a very, very dire climate change induced crossroads. And at the same time, it's being run by probably the worst bunch, the least genuine group of people I've ever seen run it. There was always kind of a steady number of good government types or basically neutral types. Not anymore. They're all gone in favor of just what I would rank as a really vile group of profiteers, most of whom plan on soaking up all the wealth they can, and undoubtedly will, as some of their recent predecessors already have, then just leave town and leave the place after they've wrecked it completely to whatever's left. And I think that's what's going on now.
Well, that is a very sobering description of Amarillo. But I think, Jeff, and I'm going to come back around to you, but I think, Jeff, what you're kind of getting at speaks in some way to what the central mission of our organization and our festival is, which is to show people the sobering truth whenever we can. But when I look to someone like Hayden, to also show that there is a potential for action, there is a potential for agency, and we have to grasp the importance of it, and we have to take the initiative. I don't know where that initiative and action is going to lead us, because some of our problems are so immense, but I do think it's what attracted me to this film. And Jasmine, I'm going to turn to you first, is one of, and it's something that Jeff had kind of reminded me of, at the bottom of a lot of, issues that you find discussed are politics, in the sense that we have to find a way to distribute power amongst ourselves, and to do it in an equitable and fair way that we can come about policy decisions together. And Jasmine, when you had mentioned the discouragement of so few people in the United States voting, that's what really, one of the things that really attracted me to Kid Candidate, that it was so inspiring about participating in politics, not just simply thinking that it's something that happens over there and that it doesn't affect your daily life in profound ways, but that it is very much rudimentarily about being. We have to decide these things amongst ourselves, and we have to take the responsibility. It's not just a right, it's also a responsibility to take part. So Jasmine, we've had some conversations outside of this interview. What were some of the things that, aligned your thinking about Kid Candidate and the mission of the Global Peace Film Festival to work towards a more just and peaceful world? Jasmine?
I'm muted, sorry. Like I said, some of the things that are the most important to me is, having such a large economic gap between people just kind of just perpetuates and creates the system. And it's on purpose. When your daily thought is about what you're going to eat and how you're going to make things happen for you, you're not thinking about what else is happening around you and who's deciding what for you and where. So until there is economic equality, until the money's being spent fairly, until, you know, it's like a chicken and an egg thing over there. And it happens in our cities, in every cities. It's happening probably in Orlando, it's happening in Los Angeles, it's happening in New York, it's happening in Amarillo, it's happening all over. And so what's most important for me, and I don't have the answer to this, is how to get people involved. And I think one of the ways that I've found is to be able to see someone like you on screen or in front of you doing something that you never thought you could do. And I think that's really, really important. And that's why Hayden's such a great subject and such an important subject is, you know, if you're not seeing people like you doing these things, you're not going to think that you're able to participate. And I don't know how people learn civics in America. I don't know what they teach you in school, or like if they teach you about local government. But for me, what I even learned from this process is that you can affect the most change in your town. Like that is where you can make the most difference, not in a national election, not putting someone in Congress. Like it's who your city council people are is going to directly affect you the most. And so, I mean, everything you guys stand for is in this movie, you know, everything. And that's why I was so excited to be a part of it. I was like, this is like kismet or something, because it, you know, it had the film has to be a part of it. And not that this is like a deep dive into corruption or anything. This is a very light, entertaining movie. And we're not like, you know, we're just kind of showing, you know, some of the issues that we're all facing, but there are like big issues. And even if you just skim the surface of it, you know, you feel like the gravity of, you know, what is missing in politics today. So I think, you know, I don't know. I just think it's a perfect alignment, and I would love to see like more people like Hayden, you know, getting involved, and especially in this time where we're so like disconnected from and so distracted from everything, to have something that's entertaining and something that's, you know, positive in front of you. And Hayden's not the perfect candidate, but he's a great candidate too, you know? So I'm hoping that he inspires a lot of people that see this movie.
I think he will. I think he will, Jasmine. And Hayden, I'd love to hear from you, because for people who haven't seen the film, when they do watch the film, they will, if you don't mind me saying, watch you evolve and watch you, you know, realize some, you know, some kind of important things about what it meant to run for local office.
Yeah. And I think that's another thing that's one of the most important elements of the movie is, I think, to create, kind of pull down that barrier of younger people that are afraid to run for public office. I think one of the best things you can do is not depict a movie where it's just like this young person just as a natural at it, where it's just like, wow, they were just like young Obama out here just wooing people and sweeping them off their feet. I think it's important to have a movie where it's just like, oh, there's, you know, a part in the movie where the guy embarrasses himself and looks like a moron. Like, it's important for somebody to go, you know, you can tell this person has good intentions, but they also to a certain extent don't know what they're doing at the certain point. And you see them learn because they screw up. And that's important to see someone go like, okay, I did that wrong the first time. How can I do it better the next time? And I think that's integral to the whole process and visual element, is seeing me make embarrassing stumbles, and sometimes good-natured stumbles. It's not out of spite or being vindictive. It's just somebody who's new to it. And I think an important thing with the movie as well is, obviously, I wasn't the best candidate for the job. I wasn't the smartest. I wasn't the most prepared. I wasn't the most well-spoken person. And I'll say, if there was someone at the time running who actually was a great candidate to maybe take these people out, then me running would have been a bad idea, because that actually would have taken away from someone who maybe had the keys to actually win it. But in my defense, at the time, there really wasn't anyone running who I think had any kind of solid message going against these kinds of people. So for me, assembling it kind of as I went, I think was a good start. I wouldn't recommend it as the way to do it every time. And if I were to run for public office again, obviously I wouldn't start off as a gag campaign, because you probably will lose. And if you run without donations, you probably will lose. And learning on the job in terms of politics is not the best way of going about it. But I do think in terms of how it all began and how it ends up in the film, I think it overall is a really positive message. And I'm glad people can see me make mistakes. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, can I just add to that? I think that's part of the appeal of this whole movie, is Hayden being a real person and not being a perfect person, and all of us being able to relate to him, me included, you know, and what a brave person to like kind of let us in on all of those moments that, you know, he found embarrassing for himself. I don't think there's anything embarrassing there. I think you're great. But I would understand seeing yourself in that way. It's probably really difficult, but it's such a great, there's so many great moments that you like. It just makes you want to root for him even more, because he's a real person, and you actually, not only do you see him grow, but you see his intelligence, you know, and you see his passion.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing, is I think we've put way too much emphasis on perfection and package and politics, and that's where it starts to get kind of dangerous. Is we believe that a candidate not showing any flaws is a plus to them, going like, well, they're trustworthy, they're flawless, they look great, they talk great. And I think we actually probably need to add some normalcy to have political candidates that they stumble, they make mistakes. And I don't mean making mistakes by like tweeting something offensive or doing something like really crass or rude. I mean making mistakes like, if somebody, I always made a point when I was running, if somebody asked me a question I didn't know the answer to, I would say, I'm not informed enough on that to give an answer on it, because I kind of knew there's going to be a lot of things I'm not going to know, and I'm not going to try to talk out of my ass on it, because then I'm committing, the number one rule of being a politician is lying. And I really didn't want to go that route of just trying to cover my ass to look better. I was at least willing to go, I would rather look dumb than look like a liar.
Yeah, and listen, let me add something too, if it's okay. I don't mean to distract you guys. But, I mean, what we're really talking about here, and is something that Jasmine and Hayden and I all appreciate in the same way, is that no matter how unprepared Hayden was in terms of understanding like the crisis of the water, or how awful these people that on the surface hold the political power and in reality hold real power in that town are, no matter how naive he was about some of that, the one thing he had was genuine sincerity. And how rare is that? I mean, we're living in a country right now on every level where people just assume that if you're running for office, you're some insincere sociopath. And most of the time, they're probably right. And the slicker that most politicians are, the more insincere and utterly sociopathic they tend to be. And, I've had the misfortune of dealing with a lot of people on the higher levels of state politics in Texas and also federal politics, doing some of the work that I've been doing over the years. And let me tell you, I mean, these are some really, regardless of what people say they stand for or who their constituency is, these are some remarkably insincere, awful human beings. And Hayden was never insincere. He's not an awful person. And I mean, if we're going to ever start any place, it's got to start with somebody that actually is willing to listen and say, well, I've never thought about that, or I don't know about that. Without that door opening, you can't have any genuine politics, and you're never going to have any program for change or any of that. So anyway, I'm just, I have believed from the beginning, the day that I met him, that he was a very sincere person, and he still is. And that makes him a complete rarity and oddball in the world of politics. Thank God.
One of the things I was going to ask Hayden is, one of the things about the film is that it really sort of humanizes the run for office in a way. that is, I think, will be inspirational to people who see the film to say, I can do this too. So Hayden, are you thinking of, would you run again? Or are you looking for other people to run again? How has this overall changed your worldview? Because we saw you evolve through the film, and people who watch it will see that, will see that evolution. But where next for you?
So I moved from Amarillo in 2020, just 2 hours away to Lubbock, because my wife's getting her master's degree at Texas Tech. And it wasn't like I lost an election and just bolted out of town. It more just had to do with my wife kind of put off her dreams for so long to support mine, even down to when I was running for office. She received an offer to go to school to get her master's degree and turned it down because I was running for public office. So it kind of reached a point where after I ran, my wife received an opportunity again to get her master's degree. And I was like, it's my turn to kind of put my stuff on the back burner, let her go after her dreams. I follow and support the way she supported me. So I'm obviously living in a city I've only lived in for a year. So I'm not trying necessarily to jump into new towns and try running for office in every town I'm in. I would like to run for public office again. The only thing I would say is I think I would have better luck a few years removed from the way this campaign happened in the video and the satire and all of that. I appreciate how it began and how it happened, but it still just has a lot of negative connotations when you start off as a gag satirical candidate. That's kind of hard to shake. And I think if I do run again, obviously I want to take more time to feel like a stronger candidate. I don't want to learn on the job. I don't want to be putting the pieces together weeks before I file to be on the ballot. If I do it again, there's a lot of big changes I would want to make, including even taking donations. So at this point, I don't have any plans right now in the moment to run again, mainly just because where I'm living, but it's definitely not out of the picture. And I think there's a possibility it could happen again.
I want to do the sequel. I want to be there when you run for office again.
I want to be your campaign advisor again, Hayden. I don't know.
well, there's got to be a kid candidate too. We'll get the crew back. We'll get the crew back together and have another go at it.
Well, yeah. I think you're ready for some actual ideas next time.
Yeah.
But hey, in the meantime, you have another album coming out, correct?
Yeah, I'm doing more of the music stuff. I have another record coming out actually next month, September 24th, with a label in New York called Mexican Summer. So I'm kind of focused on kind of in the music world right now.
Tell people where they can find your music.
So you can go to my Bandcamp. If you search Hayden Pedigo on Bandcamp, you can pre-order the record or buy it when it's out. Or you can go to the Mexican Summer website and they have the record on their web store as well and more info on the album. So
Jeff, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and where, what's next for you.
Well, okay, I'll give you the shortest possible version. I am spending a lot of time in northern New Mexico, because in Taos, New Mexico. I am building what I believe is a new kind of regional civil rights organization that's real focused on climate justice and defense of the local communities up here against the encroachment that I see rapidly developing by rich white people and developers. And at the same time, I'm working with my son and my family who also live up here to develop a whole new approach to food self-sufficiency and personal autonomy. I think that civil rights is going to look very different going forward. And I think that what we really are going to have to do, I think that the task of the so-called civil rights movement is going to be to promote personal autonomy in an increasingly sort of digitized totalitarian thing that we're going into. I mean, there are issues out there that people need to understand, and I'm trying to do that in a community that I believe in. I mean, I still have a law practice in Amarillo. I have a partner that does plenty of work there. I just settled a pretty good sized civil rights case against the county. But I think that that the idea of working with, I think that into the future, Amarillo is probably doomed. I think they're going to doom themselves with their own their willingness to get sucked into these meaningless narratives, Trump versus Biden and the rest. And I think that meanwhile, they're going to be very, very unprepared for what climate change is going to bring about. I think that some communities are going to be much better naturally prepared for it, including the one I live in up here now. And anyway, that's about as short a long, boring version as I can give you. The real short version is I'm trying to turn myself from really terrible micro eco farmer into, my lifetime goal now is to become a mediocre micro eco farmer. I've learned it's a lot of hard work, and you can't just like do this overnight. It doesn't work that way.
And Jasmine.
Well, Jeff, right. One quick thing, Nina. Jeff, now that we're all connected, you'll have to keep us up to date about your evolution from bad to mediocre. We want to.
Yes. And we want to have the film in the festival about
Well,
it.
no, I want to do it. I mean, we're going to show people not only how to grow food, but which anybody, there are plenty of people that'll show you that, but what to grow and what a family needs to get by and how much work are you willing to put into preserving it. And, I've learned it's a whole lot of work, but it's also, I think, going to be how people survive as human beings in the period that we're facing, where we're going to become, I think that there's a real drive to make people increasingly dependent on the federal government and on governments. And I think that the most fundamental civil right is the right to be an autonomous person, to have power, to have agency. And this is, to me, the thing I've worked for my whole life, is to see people become empowered enough to make change. Just like Hayden, I think, stands as a symbol of somebody that can empower people to go to make that leap and go like, I can do this. And, I think that that's really what the struggle is all about, is empowering individuals and communities against what I believe to be an increasingly disempowering, powerless kind of future.
And Jasmine, finally, what's next for you, and how can our audiences support your work?
I can't really talk about my next project yet because I haven't signed my deal, which I've been waiting for like 3 weeks. But I can tell you it's a documentary series, and it's very exciting, and it's not straight politics, but it will be seen as political. And you could, to support me, just support the film, support Hayden and support Jeff, and register to vote. That's really important to me. That's how you support me and get to know who your city council people are. And if you care about something, just do something about it. You don't have to run for office. You can go to a meeting or learn about something or go pick up trash on the beach. Just if we all do something, you can make a change.
That's a great way to end the conversation. Thank you so much, Jasmine. Thank you so much, Hayden, and thank you so much, Jeff. We hope that you will continue to check out peacefilmfest.org to find out updates about the festival upcoming in September. Again, the in-person screening starts September 20th and run through September 26th. The virtual streaming portion of the festival begins September 27th and runs through October 3rd. Consider following us on social media, join our mailing list, subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also please be sure, if you want to support Jasmine Stodel's work, please go to jasminestodel.com and go to gunpowdersky.com, and the full website is on the card here, and you can find all the information about Kid Candidate from the distributor. And again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you at the next Glow.